You know, usually prominent characters in the story have a couple of nicknames, like Jaime Lannister being referred to as the Young Lion by his friends and Kingslayer by his enemies, or Robert Baratheon having the epithet of the Usurper, or the Demon of the Trident by his supporters. Oberyn Martell only has one, the Red Viper. No need for other nicknames when the one you have already describes you so well. Whether you're trying to insult him or flatter him, the Red Viper works. Most of the other characters I made similar videos on earned their nickname towards the end of their backstory, while Oberyn gets his pretty much at the very beginning. He was born around 258 AC. The exact date hasn't been given, but he mentions the age gap between the Lannisters when he recalls the time his mother tried to arrange a betrothal with Tywin's children. He was the third and last born of the ruling Martell family of Dorne. His parents' names are unknown. His mother has just been referred to as the Princess of Dorne. His eldest brother was 10 years older than he was, and his sister was only a year older than him. There were 2 other boys after Doran, but they died soon after their birth, as well as some miscarriages. Oberyn grew up very close with his sister Elia, who didn't always have the best health. He says they were inseparable as children. Well, at one point, they were separated, because Oberyn didn't stay with his family for long. He was fostered by one of the Martell's bannermen, House Tyrell, in their home, Sandstone, instead of Sunspear with his siblings. At age 16, he was found in bed with the paramour of another Dornish lord, and this is how he gets his name. And it was a powerful lord at that. It was Edgar Ironwood's paramour. The Ironwoods are the second most prominent house in this kingdom after the Martells, and at one point were far more powerful and their rivals in conquering Dorne. The Dornish are a passionate people, so someone sleeping with the one you love will not go without consequences. Despite the Martells being the Ironwood's liege lords, the older and larger Edgar challenges Oberyn to a duel. Here's a quote from the 3rd book when Tyrion gives a little backstory on Oberyn the moment he enters the series. Doran Martell, the ruling prince of Dorne, was invited to Joffrey's wedding and asked to be a part of his small council, but Oberyn showed up instead. Oberyn Nymeros Martell, Tyrion muttered under his breath as he fell in beside the man, the Red Viper of Dorne, and what in the 7 hells am I supposed to do with him? He knew the man only by reputation, to be sure, but the reputation was fearsome. When he was no more than 16, Prince Oberyn had been found abed with the paramour of old Lord Ironwood, a huge man of fierce repute and short temper. A duel ensued, though in view of the prince's youth and high birth, it was only to first blood. Both men took cuts, and honor was satisfied, yet Oberyn Martell soon recovered, while Lord Ironwood's wounds festered and killed him. Afterward, men whispered that Oberyn had fought with a poisoned sword, and ever thereafter, friends and foes alike called him the Red Viper. This situation couldn't go unpunished. The duel was only to first blood, but Oberyn made sure one cut was all that was needed to kill Edgar Ironwood. The cautious Doran sent his little brother into temporary exile to show repercussions were made and to prevent any outrage, though no one will call it an exile. His time traveling the world only made Oberyn more dangerous, however. He first went to Old Town to study at the Citadel. He forged 6 links to a maester's chain, which is no easy task, then grew bored and left Westeros. Each link basically represents a mastery of a certain subject, like math, medicine, or magic. In Essos, he learned about poisons and possibly even dark magic. In Westeros, using poison was seen as a coward's weapon, but that didn't seem to bother Oberyn. He wasn't ashamed of his weapon of choice, that and his spear. After satisfying his thirst for knowledge, his bloodlust was next. He became a sellsword for the Second Sons, fighting other people's wars in disputed lands in western Essos, fairly close to Dorne. He even went as far as forming a sellsword company of his own, before returning home to Westeros. But during all his travels, he also made time for some baby making. And of course, a man that sleeps around this much would only have daughters, and he had a lot of them. His first 4 daughters he had with different women from Westeros and Essos. His last 4 were with his paramour, Ellaria Sand, who he had been with for years until the time of his death, although they did share different partners without caring much about their gender.
I'm here to welcome you to the capital.
Ellaria Sand, my paramour.
All 8 daughters looked different from one another, especially the first 4, considering they had different mothers, with a variety of different races. But they all shared one common feature. They inherited the Red Viper's eyes. Not the color, but the serpent-like shape to them. All his daughters share the nickname of the Sand Snakes, taking after Oberyn's epithet and the fact that they are all bastards from Dorne. Each kingdom has a different last name for their bastards. Winterfell is snow, the Reach is flowers, and Dorne is sand. Oberyn, unlike many other lords in the Seven Kingdoms, took a very active role in raising his bastards. His firstborn daughter, Obara, he had with a prostitute when he was in Oldtown. At a young age, he came to claim her and take her away from her mother. When the mother didn't comply, Oberyn smacked her and asked Obara to choose her mother's tears or his spear. She chose the spear. The mother drank herself to death the next year, while Obara learned and eventually mastered using the spear in battle. His daughters are all proficient with different weapons that fit their personalities. Well, except for the youngest one. She's still far too little. Oberyn taught the older girls to be independent and expert fighters. His third eldest daughter, Tyene, also became a poison specialist like her father. Oberyn took Tyene out to the deserts of Dorne to personally teach her how to become a crazed killer. He caught some vipers and showed Tyene the safest way to milk them for their venom. That's just the kind of father-daughter relationship the Red Viper had with his little sand snakes. His children have also inherited the fearless and trouble-causing personality he had. Oberyn says, "I was a monstrous young fellow. Someone should have sliced out my vile tongue." He is a bit more complex than a rash and uncontrollable character, however. The Tyrells and Martells have always had a very bloody history with one another, and many believe Oberyn reignited this flame. But there's a lot more to the story that most of the characters don't know. An attorney years ago, the heir to Highgarden, Willas Tyrell, entered at a far too young age because his father, Mace Tyrell, wanted that glory shone on his family. Willas was not ready for the kind of competition that would be in attendance, one of them being Oberyn. The two faced off in a joust where the Red Viper cleanly hit the young Willas in the chest, but he fell awkwardly and his horse crushed his leg, crippling him. Oberyn wasn't bloodthirsty then. It seemed more like he felt bad for the kid. He sent his own personal maester to quickly care for him. He continued to blame his foolish father, calling him the fat flower ever since.
Eating, drinking, singing, while your own children were being rounded up by...
That is an entirely unfair accusation.
Look me in the eye and tell me there was no singing.
Willas never shared any ill will towards Oberyn. Strangely enough, they were pretty friendly with one another. Even years after, they sent each other letters discussing their mutual interest in horseflesh. Willas was cut from Game of Thrones since there were too many Tyrell brothers for Marjorie to have. The writers just combined some of his story with his little brother's, Loras. But Oberyn's fearless, monstrous ways haven't really changed much, considering he was insane enough to take on the Mountain in single combat. His vile tongue got him killed at the end of Tyrion's trial.
I'm going to hear you confess before you die. You raped my sister. You murdered her. You killed her children. Say it now and we can make this quick.
Everyone knew Gregor Clegane was the one responsible for his sister's death along with his young niece and nephew. There was no need to admit it was under Tywin's orders because that was a given too. What I'm curious about is what was Oberyn doing during Robert's rebellion? The Dornish army had to join in the battle because the Mad King held Elia and her children as sort of hostages in order for them to support the crown. 10,000 Dornish spearmen joined in, fairly late I should mention, under the command of Oberyn Martell, Oberyn's uncle and one of the 7 Kingsguard members at the time. His uncle Luwin died on the battlefield, but Oberyn's whereabouts have yet to be mentioned in the books. We may find out in the next book, since Doran's daughter Arianne will continue to be a POV character in the Winds of Winter and will probably have a large role. We know he was at the tourney at Harrenhal in 281 AC, but then he just disappears from the story in 282 AC when the rebellion was going down. I don't know what would have stopped him from forcing his way into the Red Keep and saving Elia. We do know that Oberyn wanted to rebel against Robert immediately after his successful rebellion. His older brother Doran was able to calm the situation down like he always has. His plan for revenge was a lot slower. Oberyn wanted to crown Viserys king, but Doran made a secret pact where his daughter Arianne would marry him when they were of age and conquer Westeros together later on after more planning. Oberyn put his spear down and waited patiently for 17 years while no one knew what they were scheming together. Everyone believed it was Jon Arryn, Robert's hand of the king, that made peace with Dorne. Jon Arryn sailed to Sunspear to return Prince Luwin's bones, sat down with Prince Doran and ended all the talk of war. But Robert never went to Dorne thereafter, and Prince Oberyn seldom left it. George Martin went as far as to give the Red Viper a snake-like appearance to match his epithet. although the show's casting didn't really match the book's description of him, but that didn't bother me.
Have they told you who I am?
Some dead man.
I am the brother of Oberyn Martell. And do you know why I've come all the way to this stinking shit pile of a city? For you?
Pedro Pascal's portrayal of this awesome character was spot on. It's unfortunate the sand snakes on the show weren't very memorable.
Nim, Obara,
Will it be war?
Prince Doran will weep for your father, but nothing else. We must avenge Oberyn ourselves.
And that's the story of how Oberyn became the Red Viper, one of the most badass characters in the series. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you haven't checked out the recent video I did on Robert becoming the Demon of the Trident, I'll leave a link on the screen now that you can click or tap on. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see y'all soon.